It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
And you're now on the line with Douglas.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Absolutely.
We looked it up. It was 2 years ago, almost to the day. You were here November of 2021 the last time.
Oh, my God. Right in the middle of the pandemic.
So you survived COVID all right, yeah?
Yes. Yeah, I did. Hopefully it's in our rearview mirror.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, that was a miserable couple of years, I'll tell you.
It does. Yes.
So you're back and you got a new book. Let's see. It says it's the second book in the 620 Man series. Okay, I don't know the first book. So tell us who the 620 Man is, if you would.
So, yeah, Travis Devine was a former Army Ranger, and the name, the 620 Man, when he left the Army under a dark cloud, he felt really guilty about what happened. He wanted to be Army his whole career, but it didn't turn out that way. So he went and got his MBA, and he started working on Wall Street as a financial analyst because he hated it. It was sort of like his penance. And the train he would take from Westchester into the city every day was the 620 train. And on that train, he saw something pretty unusual and mysterious that sort of threw him headlong into this mystery that was the 620 Man novel. During the course of that novel, he's approached by a retired two-star general named Emerson Campbell, who says to him, I know what you did in the Army. I'll give you a choice. One, you can go to Fort Leavenworth and spend the rest of your days in a stockade, or two, you can come and work for me at my little agency at Homeland Security. So he decides to go work for this guy. And basically, Devine can get dropped anywhere in the world, and with his skills, he could figure out problems, resolve them, and come out alive. And in The Edge, what I decided to do with him, I sent him to a little town in coastal Maine called Putnam. And up there, a woman named Jenny Silkwell, who's from a prominent family in that town. Her dad was an Army hero and a senator who now has Alzheimer's. She worked for the CIA, and her body was found floating in the ocean off the coast. Somebody murdered her. So Devine is sent up there to see, was her murder connected to her connection to the CIA? And did people torture her? Did they get secrets that we have to worry about? Or was she killed because of some secret in her hometown, something to do with her past? So he has to go up there, work with the local cops and all the people that knew Jenny, including her siblings who still live there, to figure out who killed Jenny Silkwell and why.
Is this guy, would he be akin to 007?
It's funny you say that. I sold this series to Netflix. They're going to make a series of movies about him, and they said they call him the American James Bond. Instead of a martini and a tux, he carries a Glock and a lunch pail. So he's very much an Americanized version of James Bond.
Okay, well, I apologize for not having read the books yet, but it's definitely on my short list.
No.
But just when you were describing him, that's what was coming to mind, that he was sort of this, freelance agent, but he worked for the bigger powers,
Yes, yeah. He's got some special skills, but he's human too. So sometimes it's not as easy as all that. He doesn't get in quickly and get out quickly. A lot of things happen along the way, and he suffers a lot for sure.
So this is going to be a Netflix series. Is it in production or?
Yeah, it's in development. They have a showrunner and writer attached to it. They're very excited about it. Now that the actors and writer strike is over, they're going full bore on it, and they think it could be a lunch bowl for a lot of them, and they love his character.
I'm a little bit new to Netflix. I only recently subscribed to it, but I started getting into a lot of their series.
Yep.
So you've got 2 books. Do you know how many you're going to do in this series?
Not yet. I mean, I'm working on a third one right now. I don't know what the duration is going to be, how many books are going to be in the series, but I'm just going from book to book right now.
Okay. Well, no, I'm trying to figure out how many Netflix series can they get out of one of your books.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would imagine their plan is for the first book to be an entire season. 10 or 15 episodes based on that. And then, they have a lot of flexibility. Once they have the character in place, they don't have to follow neatly along any books that I write. They can create, and particularly with his character, they can, as I said, I set him up to drop him anywhere in the world. They don't have to wait on a book that I'm writing in order to keep doing seasons with him. They can create original material because they would own the character.
Oh, I see. Okay. I know that Absolute Power was your first big major hit that was turned into a film.
Yes.
And now, aside from this one, have any of your other books been made into films?
Yes. So the King and Maxwell series was a television series on TNT for a year. I've had Wish You Well was made into a feature film with Ellen Burstyn and Josh Lucas. I've had 2 Hallmark movies made out of my work. The Christmas Train, which is the highest rated Hallmark movie in Hallmark history, and another Hallmark movie, One Summer.
Let me talk a little bit about your process, your writing process. Do you ever find yourself sort of, running out of fresh ideas and just sort of feeling like you're going to rehash something that you've already written? Or do you say, if I can't figure that out, I'm not going to write it at all?
Yeah, I have written a lot of books, so I have to worry about retreading old ground for sure. But I kind of look forward and not behind. And with the different characters I write about, even if the plots may have share some similarities here and there because the characters are so different, they don't seem like they're similar at all in many ways. And I'm always thinking about new stuff, reading new stuff, traveling places, talking to people. So fresh material is always coming my way. I think curiosity is one of the best attributes a writer can have because that means you're always seeking out new ground and new material. And I constantly am doing that. I'm always trying to seize upon opportunities to go to different places and learn new things. So I don't really worry about rehashing old plots just because the way I do it really doesn't neatly dovetail into doing something like that. So I'm never too worried about going over old ground.
Do you ever see yourself writing in a completely different genre than you're currently writing in?
Oh, absolutely. I've written, some more traditional fiction, like Wish You Well was not a thriller. Neither one of the Hallmark movies were a thriller. I have a book coming out in the spring of next year I've been working on for about 15 years, totally different from anything I've written before. It's set in 1968. It's a courtroom historical drama. A lot of it is autobiographical, set in the 1960s when I was a little kid. And I've never imagined myself as any particular kind of writer. I don't put myself into a genre box. I just like to tell stories, so wherever those stories might lead me, that's where I'm going to go.
You've got a foundation that I want to talk about called Wish You Well Foundation. I know we've touched on this before when you were on, but people don't always listen to every single show I put out. So in case this is the first show that they've heard you on, tell us a little about the foundation.
So our mission statement is simple. We want to eradicate illiteracy in the U.S., and illiteracy is a big problem in the United States, and also the fact that probably 90% of Americans don't read books on a consistent basis. So reading will be the top definer of how well you're going to do economically. And that's going to determine what sort of job you get and how much you're being paid. It's also going to determine a lot about your family life. How well you're going to be able to support, if you have a family, how well you're going to be able to support them, whether books are going to be part of your kids' lives, or whether they're going to grow up to be literacy challenged as well. So the Wish You Well Foundation, we fund hundreds, if not thousands, of programs across the United States, helping people read at a lower level across the spectrum, at a higher level across the spectrum. And the more people we can allow to do that and help do that, a lot of the problems we have as a country will go away: homelessness, hunger, poverty, crime, because all those social ills are tied to low literacy skills. Because when you take people's abilities to earn good livings and have good lives, a lot of bad things happen to those people, and that's what we're seeing today. So we have really upped our game during the pandemic. A lot of funding, other sources of funding for these organizations went out the window because businesses were hurting and they just cut off money. When in fact, we needed to put more money into those types of elements. So we just finished a new funding round. I think we funded over 120 different organizations, and we'll continue to do so because every dollar you put into literacy, you're going to get $10,000 in return.
Well, so how does that work? I mean, does this money actually go to schools, or where does it go?
It goes to lots of different places. I'll give you an example. We might get a funding request from the school to help pay for a librarian, and help pay for books, to put books on the shelves, because they don't have any budget in their they don't have any money in their budget for actual books. Or we might a literacy organization like Pro Literacy. They're based in Syracuse, New York, but they have chapters all over the country. So we'll get a request from them. We need to help pay for training for volunteer tutors. We need classroom and study materials for our students learning how to read. We might need a food component. Can you help them with daycare? Because people coming in, they can't afford daycare for their kids, but they still want to learn how to read, so they have to bring their kids in, and we have to feed their kids. So it's a full spectrum of services that are required in order to help people, because you have to meet them where the people are. If you don't provide those services, they're not going to come in to learn how to read at a higher level because they can't afford to. So our funding requests span the gamut. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary how many things we get from public schools, from private schools, from it goes across the board. And we try to fund as many as we can that fit our mission statement and that we think are good quality fits and going to help a lot of people.
Do you think that the technology is killing the kids' desire to read books? Like they'd rather just be on their iPhone?
Yeah, it's also killing their mental ability to read books, because social media has been shown to shorten people's attention spans, not just kids, but adults as well. So now adults are having trouble reading a page, much less 400 pages, because, TikTok only takes 3 seconds. Sometimes when I sit down to start writing a book, I'm like, so how long do I have to capture their attention? Do I have 10 words? Can I get a whole paragraph before they lose interest? It's a daunting challenge, and it doesn't need to be this way. I mean, our brains are built for the long haul, for the long-form thinking. When I was a lawyer, no client ever thanked me for giving him an answer fast if it later turned out to be wrong. They just didn't. So our brains, if you give our brains time to think through things, it's extraordinary what we can bring out the other end. But if you don't give them the time, you're not going to get much of a product.
Well, I have to wonder if it didn't start long before the iPhone, if it started with the advent of motion pictures and then the radio and then the TV. And like each generation that grew up started reading books less and less and less because there was this other form of media entertainment.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, that is also the case. We are now competing with all sorts of different entertainment venues. They're a lot more heavily marketed and financed than books are. Movies and television are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Games are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. My son was telling me, you think Hollywood box offices are high? He goes, Call of Duty, if you're a Hollywood blockbuster, if you make $1 billion, that's like extraordinary. Very few films do that. He's like, Call of Duty, a video game, they sold $7 billion worth of that in like the first week. So, yeah, it's a lot of competition out there.
What about graphic novels? You're going to delve into that?
I don't see myself doing that. I mean, again, I never say never if I had a collaborator, because I can't do any of that myself. But they're incredibly popular, and they're books. How about that? And they allow kids to read both words and also have a visual impact as well. I think they're terrific. And anything that gets people, reading books, enjoying stories is a good thing.
Well, it's also literature now. Like you said, it's a book. And it used to be comic books were for kids. Well, no more, right? I mean, there are some incredibly complex graphic novels out there.
There are extraordinarily talented people creating them as well. And again, I hold those out to be just as much of a book as a book. And just because they have pictures of them doesn't lessen their impact and their influence and, the gravitas that we should attach to them. So I'm all for that. I think anytime I see anybody, particularly a young person in a bookstore or a library, pull out a book of any kind, whether it's a graphic novel or a magnum novel or a regular novel, I'm inwardly cheering.
We've got just about a minute and a half, and on your bio there's some talking points, and one of them, the last one, says, do you ever feel there's a time where you may just put your feet up and sit at your desk indefinitely? I guess that means retire.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, I identify as being a writer, so I'm at my unhappiest when I'm between stories. It's not like when I finish a book, I want to go take 6 months off. I'm like feverish and like, what am I going to do next? And if I weren't able to write, I'd feel like somebody chucked me out of a spacecraft without any oxygen, and I'm just floating hopelessly through space. That's how much writing means to me. So I don't really see myself retiring.
So you don't look at it as a job in that regard?
No, I've never looked at. No, I mean I spent many years of my life writing stories, and nobody bought them, so I wasn't making any money. But that didn't quell the joy that I had in creating those stories. And to this day, it's a big business, and I do incredibly well, and I have books everywhere, and I understand that. But when I sit down to write a story, I'm not thinking about any of that. I'm just thinking about the little 8-year-old kid who used to sit down with his little journal and write short stories. That's what keeps me on track.
Oh, that's great. Well, David, thanks again for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Give out your websites, please.
Yeah, it's davidbaldacci.com, and the website for the foundation is wishyouvellfoundation.org.
Super. Well, hope to have you back on next year. Maybe we make it a yearly thing. Always love to talk to you.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, David. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.